Hello, everyone. Welcome to Suspense Magazine. I'm your host, Tracey Devlyn, and I'm here today with Agatha Award nominee Celeste Connally to talk about her new release, All's Fair in Love and Treachery. Welcome, Celeste.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
You bet. Well, I have to say, the title certainly sets the tone for the book.
Right,
I
yes.
love it.
Yes, and to
There
hold
you
the
go. Yes,
you
pop
see
it
it.
up there for us. And that's such a beautiful
Thank
cover.
you so much. Yes, the designer at Minotaur Books, she just did an amazing job. So, and with my book one as well. So
Yeah.
just incredible.
Yeah, it's really it has a nice blend of kind of a contemporary feel, but with that it still brings in that Regency, that historical era. So they did Minotaur, I've noticed it does a great job with book covers. I don't know if there's been one that I've seen done by Minotaur that I didn't like.
I completely agree. I mean, they just do an amazing job with all their covers. So I feel extremely lucky to be with them and to have such a beautiful cover. So yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Celeste, if you don't mind, just to get us started, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I have been a freelance writer and editor in my background, mostly for historical publications or nonfiction publications, educational writing, that kind of thing. And my first book was published through as a cozy mystery through Minotaur Books. I won the Malice Domestic Best First Traditional Novel Contest.
Nice.
A little bit
Congratulations.
along. So thank you. That was in 2017, and my book came out in 2019. And that was Murder Once Removed under my pseudonym of S.C. Perkins, and the C stands for Celeste. And and then I went into historical mysteries, which is an absolute love of mine. And so it has just been a dream come true. And I live in Houston, and but I'm a huge Anglophile and have been my whole life. Grew up watching period dramas and whatnot, so historical mysteries just was a great fit for me. I love them so much.
Yeah, yeah, great. Well, it sounds like the writing bug hit you pretty early in your life.
It did, yes. Wrote my first poem when I was about six, and about my cat. And and then, and I was in journalism in high school. I was a journalism major in college, and I've just been writing my whole life. And in doing my genealogy, I have a lot of armchair genealogists in my background, and in doing our genealogy way back, we have writers going back into the 17th century in my family. And so it
Oh, neat.
is in the blood. And
Yeah.
so it's just something that makes me very happy.
Oh, good. Good. Well, it's nice to be able to do something for a living that makes you happy, that so
I,
that you have a passion for. So that's great.
I agree completely.
So, for those who don't know, your book, it's set in the Regency England. It's set in Regency England, and it is a mystery, as you mentioned. And for those who might not be familiar with that time period, how would you describe it? Kind of like a Jane Austen time period?
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
very, most people would recognize it if they've ever seen a Jane Austen movie, Pride and Prejudice, Emma, something like that. And the Regency era is technically a sub-period of the Georgian era, which was from 1714 to 1837, but the Regency era itself was from 1811 to 1820. And it was a very short period of time, and it was when the Prince Regent, who was the Prince of Wales, Prince George, who eventually became George the Fourth.
Yeah.
He served as regent for his father, which means that he served as king instead in his father's stead because George the Third had his mental illness. And so it was a very short period of time. It was often characterized by its fashion, the empire waist and whatnot, and the very, simple flowing skirts with beautiful colors and whatnot. And it was also a very free time, romantically speaking. And so that was why I really felt I could put a little bit more romance in here, is
Yeah.
because It wasn't until the Victorian era that started in 1837 that it became a lot more dour and in terms of, and very puritanical and whatnot, because Queen
Hmm.
Victoria, put that in there. But in the Regency period, there was a lot of, they called it risky Regency. There was a lot of very headstrong women who were doing new things and getting into science, and and doing things you would have never expected. There was a lot more, as Jane Austen would have put it, obstinate, headstrong women in the Regency than I even knew about until I started researching it. So it's a really fascinating time period to research and write about.
Yes, absolutely. And for those who are a little bit more familiar with contemporary references, like the Netflix's Bridgerton would be in that same time period as well. So maybe that might be one that folks have heard about recently as well.
Absolutely. The Bridgerton has really brought the Regency back into the forefront. And so,
Thank you,
yeah,
Julia Quinn.
yes, no kidding. No kidding. Thank you, because it has just been such a fabulous time to write this, this series and whatnot, and because of her. So
Yeah.
anyone who writes Regency owes her a lot right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, since we've been talking about your book and seeing the beautiful cover, can you just give us a quick summary of what the story is about?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's set in June of 1815, and June 18th was whenever the Battle of Waterloo was won. But it took 3 days for news to reach London. And once it did, there were 3 days of celebrations that took place, and it was just sort of a wild time period in English and London history and everything, because a little bit of, everything was sort of thrown out the window. There were parties in the streets and just sort of just, happy chaos all around. And so it's partly set around that time. And then there's also there's sort of three mysteries. The first mystery is when Petra has to look into her paramour, whose name is Duncan Shawcross, and whether or not that he might have killed her fiance. And then the second one is that she is hired, or enlisted by Queen Charlotte, the Queen, to look into the death of a matron at a all girls orphanage called the Asylum for Female Orphans, which was a real orphanage at the time. And then the third one was also brought from what was happening at the time, was there was a large anti-monarchy sentiment, and there were radicals that were looking to make England into a republic, but they did so largely on the basis of wanting to use violence. So she has about three things to uncover and save the day and whatnot. And so I did my best to weave them into, a fun, mystery that it's, this fast paced and takes place over these 3 days of celebrations.
Yeah, and those 3 days of celebrations, what made it kind of interesting is that the class lines disappeared a bit, right? So the ton, and the common person, might have been at the same celebration together, which would have been pretty unusual at that time period, correct?
Absolutely. So, there were classes mixing together in the streets, in, all parts of London and whatnot. And it really was a very interesting and somewhat magical time, because
Mhm.
I think that my Lady Petra is 24 years old, and I think that for these younger women to see what might be, it was probably a really, really interesting time in history for them. And then they had these 3 days of a little bit of wildness, and then they had to go back to their, very, very strict propriety. And it must have been very interesting and very strange at the same time. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I really had fun researching that and writing about it.
Yeah, I bet you did. Well, and it came out in the story too. I could tell that that was a fun moment. And some of the term is escaping me right now, but some of the lamps that they put in the windows. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? I thought that was kind of a unique feature.
Yes, they were called one of two things, either transparencies or
Yeah.
illuminations. And what they were actually paintings that were shellacked and or varnished rather, and so they were made to fit the square of a window pane or two squares of a window pane, and they were put in the windows of these houses all over London, and sometimes they were made by by the homeowners themselves or whatnot. Jane Austen made them. They're in her letters and everything. She talks about making transparencies, or you could purchase them. And what they did was they would put a candle behind it, and it would light up the scene. And so passersby walking down the street would almost look like a flickering, moving image. And they could be anything. They could be anything from paintings of puppies to, pastoral scenes and, or the Duke of Wellington, whatnot. So, and so it was sort of like a big, movie and kind of almost gave a little bit of a Harry Potter vibe in my mind's eye of those moving images
Yeah.
and whatnot. And so, it had to have been very magical to walk down the street and see them all in the front windows of all these houses and whatnot. So
Yeah. Yeah,
it was
those are the moments when you yearn for simpler times, when you can be awed by something like that, right?
absolutely
Some of the kids, I'm sure, the the kids on the street, they probably that probably just was like you were saying, like a wonderland to them, which is just amazing to think about it now, because so much hitting us now that it's hard to get surprised about anything, right?
exactly. We're so jaded, and it just must have been such a just a magical moment
Yeah,
to do that, and it was all over the place. So yeah, it was such a sometimes whenever you're researching and as a writer you know this, sometimes you just find something that is just so interesting you have to include it.
yeah,
And
yeah.
and I thought it was so interesting that I made it part of how Lady Petra figures out the mystery, at least one of
Yes.
so well, two of them. So
Yeah, yeah, very
yeah.
good. Well, you had mentioned a little bit earlier, Queen Charlotte, and one of the things that I noticed, obviously, that Lady Petra, who is, am I saying that right? Lady
Yeah.
Petra?
Lady
Okay,
Petra.
Lady Petra, who is the main protagonist of the series,
Mhm.
she has direct access, and I would say a closeness to the Queen, which you don't always find in these types of stories. Is this something that you decided ahead of time, or did that come out in the writing of the first book?
A little bit of both. I knew that I wanted to make her part of the ton, part of the aristocracy. So she is the daughter of an earl, and that's also what gives her sort of the ability to maneuver in and out of the aristocracy and go to all the best houses and whatnot. And so that was really fun to do. And so she's also the goddaughter of the Duchess of Hillmorton, and the Duchess of Hillmorton is, shall we say, besties with the Queen, and sort of probably her main lady in waiting and whatnot. And so, because of that, and because in the first book, which is Act Like a Lady, Think Like a Lord, and when Petra sort of learns to be a an amateur sleuth. It comes out in her. She works to save a friend from an insane asylum, and so just from there, when the Duchess realized what Petra had, and I actually have a little bit of a backstory. It's very small, and I had to take a lot of it out and everything, but and it's in the first, I think, chapter or second chapter of book one and everything, where the Duchess has actually had Petra doing some little odd jobs for her before, and it's so she's actually solved a few little mysteries, and I'd love to write a little fun novella about some of them before. But yes, so that was, long story short, that was sort of how that she got in with the Queen and whatnot, and but she would have been very familiar with her being the daughter of one of the foremost earls of England at the time too. And
Yeah.
so Petra's father trains racehorses and trains the Queen's racehorses and the Duchess racehorses. So
Nice, nice.
yeah.
That's great. Well, as we bring the interview to a close here, can you tell us what's up next for you? Are you working on any fun projects that you can talk about?
I do. Well, I have two more Lady Petra books coming up, which I'm so excited about.
Yes.
The next one is set at Windsor Castle, and it's already written. It's with my editor right now, and that one was so much fun to write and to research and whatnot. And then book four, I haven't quite decided where I'm going to set it yet, but I'm thinking it might be in Bath, which is just not too far from England, and the spa town that Jane
Right.
Austen made famous and so many others. So
All
we'll
right.
see. But
Good. Good,
yeah.
good. All right, fun. Well, thank you so much, Celeste. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today.
Thank you
Uh,
so much for having me. This was so much fun.
yeah, you bet. We'll have to do it again whenever book 3 comes out, please.
I would love that.
So, All's Fair in Love and Treachery, it released on November 12th, if I did my homework correctly. So go grab yourself a copy at your favorite bookstore or library. And Celeste, where is the best place for readers to connect with you online?
I'm best on Instagram, but I'm also on Threads and Facebook and now Blue Sky. So we'll
Yeah.
see. We'll see
Okay.
which one wins out of the
I
Threads
know.
and Blue Sky because that's the newest thing. But I'm definitely best on Instagram, and I'd love to connect with readers.
Okay, great. Well, that's it for today, folks. Thank you for joining us on Suspense Magazine. Goodbye, everyone. Thanks so much, Celeste.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful.